Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy, and today is July 5th of 2025, and we're celebrating Saturday of the 13th week in Ordinary Time. It's also the optional memorial for St. Elizabeth of Portugal, at least in the U.S., and also the optional memorial of St. Anthony Mary Zaccaria, a priest. Today's Gospel will be the Gospel from the day, and it comes to us from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 9, verses 14 through 17. The disciples of John approached Jesus and said, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast much, but your disciples do not fast?" And Jesus answered them, "Can the wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast. No one patches an old cloak with a piece of unshrunken cloth, for its fullness pulls away from the cloak, and the tear gets worse. People do not put new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise the skins burst, the wine spills out, and the skins are ruined. Rather they pour new wine into fresh wineskins, and both are preserved." In today's first reading, we heard the story of Jacob and Esau, and how, with the help of his mother Rebekah, Jacob was able to receive the blessing from Isaac that was meant for Esau. Now, in the Old Testament, we find a lot of people who serve as, we could say, models or examples of people who are to come later. For instance, we say that Isaac foreshadows or anticipates Jesus because Isaac went to be sacrificed, carrying the wood on his back, just as Jesus later would go to be sacrificed on Calvary, carrying the wood of the cross. Likewise, we say that Moses foreshadows Jesus, because just as Moses led the chosen people out from slavery in Egypt into the Promised Land, so Jesus led us out of our slavery to sin and death to enter the Promised Land of heaven. Now, this is also true of Mary. There's a lot of women in the Old Testament who foreshadow her. For instance, sometimes we call Mary the new Eve, because just as sin entered the world through Eve, salvation from sin entered through Mary. However, the saints and the doctors of the church have also compared Mary to at least 3 other women in the Old Testament. And in each of these comparisons, we can learn about Mary's love for us and the works she undertakes on our behalf. A very appropriate topic for a Saturday. So today we can consider Mary as foreshadowed by Rebekah, which we heard in the first reading, Abigail, and Esther. So if we remember in the Old Testament, this is what we heard this morning, Rebekah was the wife of Isaac and the mother of Esau and Jacob. Now she wanted her son Jacob to receive his father's blessing, a blessing that should have gone to Esau, the firstborn. So when Esau went out, Rebekah had Jacob bring 2 lambs from his flock, prepare them for Isaac, and had Jacob bring it to his father. Now, in the same way, says one of the saints, Mary tells the angels to go and find sinners, and she prepares them through sorrow for their sins, so that they can be presented as pleasing to God the Father. And the great Marian saint, St. Louis de Montfort, goes even further. He says that Mary looks out for occasions to help her children, giving them good advice and clothing them in order to make them acceptable to the Father. He concludes that as great as Rebekah's love was for Jacob, Mary's love for us is even greater. And this is what he writes. He says, "Mary loves us tenderly, more tenderly than all the mothers in the world together. Take the maternal love of all the mothers of the world for their children. Pour all that love into the heart of one mother for an only child. Now that mother's love would be immense. Yet Mary's love for each of her children has more tenderness than the love of that mother for her child. And she loves them not only affectively, but effectively. So it's not only a love of emotion, but it's also something that happens. That is, her love is active and productive of good, like Rebekah's love for Jacob. And even more so, for Rebekah was, after all, only a symbolic figure of Mary." And St. Louis de Montfort points out, too, that notice how Jacob behaved. He loved his mother. He was always happy to be with her. And when she told him what he needed to do, he did it without complaining and without hesitation. Now, secondly, St. Bonaventure compares Mary to Abigail, calling her the Abigail sapiens, the wise Abigail. If you remember the story, Abigail was the wife of Nabal, who insulted David by sending his men away empty-handed. Now, out of revenge, David started on his way to slaughter Nabal and his whole family, but wisely, Abigail went to intervene, offering an apology and food. Now, David was so moved that he forgave the great insult, praised Abigail for her goodness, and allowed Nabal's family to live in peace. That, says St. Bonaventure, is exactly what Mary does from heaven on behalf of sinners. She knows perfectly well how to appease the divine justice with tender pleas to God, and God and sinners alike praise her for her goodness. And St. Bonaventure adds that the name Abigail means joy of the Father, and indeed Mary is the Father's joy. Lastly, even Esther is a foreshadowing of Mary. We recall that when Esther found out that all her people were to be killed, what happened? Well, she went and prayed, and then knowing that she would be killed if she went into the king's presence without being summoned, she went to the king nonetheless, who, out of love for her, asked her what she desired. And she replied, "If I have found favor in your sight, my king, give me my people which I request. Save their lives, spare them." Now think about it. If the king granted Esther the salvation of her people because he loved her, how much more will God listen to Mary in his boundless love for her when she prays for the poor sinners who entrust themselves to her? "If I have found favor in your sight," she asks, "give me my people." We know that Mary's found favor in God's sight. And because of his great love for her, God will grant her whatever she asks. So today, we should consider how we live out our love for Mary. Do we trust in her, listen to her advice, confide in her, believe in her love for us? Through the intercession of Mary, our mother, let's ask for the grace to trust in her intercession and to truly live as her children who trust in her love and protection.
If you found this video fruitful, please feel free to share it with a friend or family member. Or if you would like to learn more about our missionary priests throughout the world and how to support them, please visit iveamerica.org. Thank you for watching, and God bless.